As Terry said, my name is Chris Alexander, and I recently formed a group called the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Let me tell you briefly how it started. The legislature is where all the laws are made. The legislature governs and directs the BESI board, the school boards, all of public education, our election system. What they say goes. And I went down there to make my voice heard on some legislation early in the session in 2021. And when I went down there, I said, you know, we have a 2/3 majority in the state legislature. I'm sure I'll be able to come down here and simply support all these good conservatives that we have in the state legislature in passing all this good legislation. And when I tell you that it was the most eye-opening experience of my life, I could not believe the number of Republicans in our legislature who are doing the bidding of the globalists and the big government bureaucrats and the people who are trying to lock us down and shut us down and strip us of our freedom. I couldn't believe the level of self-enrichment that goes on in our state legislature, much of which most people aren't familiar with. I sat there and I watched good bill after good bill that were important to all of you and the vast majority of Louisianans get killed, not by Democrats, but by Republicans. And whether it was bills related to vaccine mandates and to this medical tyranny that we've experienced in Louisiana for 2 years, whether it was bills relating to election integrity, which Dr. Russ has been working on a lot, whether it was bills related to the suppression of our speech on social media, where conservatives, they have built-in algorithms where you go on and you try to exercise your constitutional right of free speech on social media and they shut you down. Legislation related to CRT in our schools, which is permeating our school system, not only Louisiana, but throughout the country. Choice in education, to break the stranglehold on the education bureaucracy in the state. And I'm very happy, Michael, to hear your remarks and what you're running for the school board, and that is where the battle is going to occur. And I appreciate your comments on your opposition to critical race theory, right now existing, as you very aptly said, under the hidden pretext of social emotional learning, which you obviously have been reading about that. It's just another way to inject the poison into the system. And I applaud your efforts to go in and fight against that. But everything that is important to us has been killed in our legislature by Republican RINOs. And on the last day of the last session, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, all of these patriotic citizens who've sat up here and testified before these committees in favor of these good bills and in opposition to these bad bills relating to the issues that I just talked about. And these legislators sit up there and act like they're being inconvenienced, like they're doing you a favor by listening to what you have to say, because so many of them have a different agenda and so many of them are bought and paid for by big special interests. Sometimes it's the education bureaucracy, the school boards, the teachers unions. They're in bed with them. And so you have people who are these quote unquote conservative Republicans killing vitally important legislation. And then, but they're doing it in committee. 75 or 80% of the great bills are killed in committee. Either they don't show up to vote, so there's not a quorum, or they show up and abstain. They're sitting up there, but they just abstain. or they vote for it, but they've arranged for a couple of their colleagues not to vote for it, so it doesn't pass out of committee. So they're doing this in very secretive ways before the bills get to the full House or the full Senate for a vote, where it's all recorded. And then after they've killed a good bill, they go back home to their constituencies and they talk about what good patriotic conservatives they are. And God bless you.
Thank you.
And we have been lied to for too long.
Amen.
The most important institution in our state is our state legislature. All of the agencies, the Education, Department of Education, the Department of Health, the Betsy Board, the school boards, are all under the authority of the state legislature, which sets Louisiana policy on all these issues. And they are not doing their job for us. And let me tell you briefly how it all started. Why is that the case? Why are these Republican RINOs doing this to us? Well, in January of 2020, two Republicans, we have a 2/3 majority in both houses, okay? In January of 2020, there were two people running for the speakership of the House of the House of Representatives here in Louisiana. One was Clay Scheck-Snyder and one was Sherman Mack. Sherman Mack is a good conservative patriot. Clay Scheck-Snyder is not. Clay Scheck-Snyder is a globalist Republican RINO. But he desperately wanted to be the Speaker of the House. He's a Republican. But there weren't enough Republicans to elect him because the conservatives in the House knew this is not one of us. So what did he do? He sold himself out to the Legislative Black Caucus in the legislature, and he managed to get 23 RINO Republicans in our legislature to vote for him. So they cobbled together a coalition between RINO Republicans and the Black Democratic Caucus, and in a 60-45 vote, Clay Scheck-Snyder became the Republican Speaker of the House. And since then, he, in concert with these globalist RINOs, has been killing and sabotaging the conservative constitutional agenda in the state legislature ever since. And we have got to do it, and that we've got to expose these RINOs one by one and remove them from office. And that's why Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group came into existence, and that is what we're doing one by one. We are exposing them very broadly, and there are a couple of them who are right here in your area. And I want to talk to you about one of them today, because it doesn't do us any good to say that we're going to drive RINOs out of the state legislature if we can't mention them by name. And that's what I'm going to do today with regard to one. And her name is Representative Stephanie Hilferty. And she's a representative from right here in Metairie. There's another one too, Joe Stagney, and Connie is a big fan of his. But I want to focus on Representative Stephanie Hilferty. Please listen to me closely, because this is going to give you an idea of exactly what's going on in our legislature. In 2021, Representative Ray Garofella from St. Bernard Parish brought a bill, a very important bill in the state legislature, which would have simply said the state of Louisiana prohibits the teaching of critical race theory in any public school classroom in Louisiana, and prohibits the initiation by a teacher of transgenderism or issues like that. Critical race theory basically teaches that the Constitution is intrinsically racist, that white people are intrinsically oppressors, black people are intrinsically oppressed and victims, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are founded upon racist principles. That is what critical race theory says. It is a poisonous doctrine. Ray Garofella brought a bill that would have prohibited the teaching of those concepts in our public schools. He's sitting before the Education Committee that is a majority Republican. Representative Stephanie Hilferty sits on that committee. Representative Garofella is giving his explanation for his bill, why it is so important, and he says we need to teach the good, the bad, and the ugly of history. We need to teach the good, the bad, of ugly of everything, of slavery, but we can't have this critical race theory where you're teaching. And Stephanie Hilferty looked at him and said, the Rhino Republican, and said, Rep. Garofella, there is no good to slavery. What are you talking about? There's no good to slavery. And he said, I understand that. You're exactly right. I didn't mean to suggest that. Of course there's no good in slavery. Nobody believes there's any good in slavery. What I mean is we need to teach all of history, the good, the bad, the ugly of history. He clarified it then, and then later in this presentation he clarified it again. You would think he's a good man. There's no reason to believe he's a racist. Not only did Stephanie Hilferty and 2 or 3 other rhinos on that committee vote against his bill, 7 hours later, Representative Hilferty is on CNN at 8 o'clock at night suggesting to a national audience that her Republican colleague in the state legislature is a racist, and that is the perception that people have. And I was sitting right behind him, and I know what he said, and I know the spirit in which he said it. She defamed him on national television, a fellow Republican. And I've been asking for her to apologize to him on the radio, because I'm an occasional guest on the radio, to apologize to him now for months and months, and she hasn't done it. This is an example of the extent to which globalist rhino Republicans in our legislature are killing. How many of you here believe that it would be very important for our state legislature to make a strong pronouncement that we are not going to teach divisive doctrines like critical race theory to our children in public schools and poison their minds? Raise your hand if you think that's important to us. Well, Stephanie Hilferty was instrumental in killing that legislation, and she's a Republican and a rhino, and she will be over here in Metairie, over here in Jefferson Parish, talking to people about what a good conservative she is. And there are other things that she's done as well, okay? There's a whole lot of things that she and other people have done. So what we need your help doing, if y'all go on our website, it's Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. It's write this down. It's www.lacag.org, www.lacag.org, and I'll give you all some cards before I go. Familiarize yourself with what we're doing on our website. All of the issues are up there. The globalist rhinos are up there. What they did on important legislation is up there. And help us to remove them from office, and help us to put in good constitutional conservatives. We're going to be going all over the state of Louisiana doing this. And Michael, if we're able to do what I know we can do, because we're already starting to expose them broadly, it's going to make your job much, much easier, not only in terms of your day-to-day work, but when you go before these legislative committees, they're going to be receptive to your viewpoints, because we're not going to be dealing with people who have been bought and paid for by big special interests anymore. We got to get rid of the gang of 23 Republicans in our legislature that we have our eyes on, and Stephanie Hilferty is one of them, right over here, and Joe Stagney is another one. I'm mentioning these two because they're from here. You know who they are. And we have to act now, or we will lose our freedom. The last thing that I want to say is this. Our legislature under the Constitution was set up to be a bulwark against federal tyranny. Our federal government is out of control. They are oppressing our freedom, our rights. They are trying to shut us down again. They tried to mandate vaccines, which was totally unconstitutional. The Founding Fathers set our state legislatures up to be a bulwark when the federal government encroaches beyond its constitutional powers. the state legislature says no, and that's what the state legislature in Florida is doing. If you want an example of how a state legislature is supposed to respond to federal tyranny, look at what the legislature in Florida is doing.
Yes.
And that's what ours should be doing. But they're not doing it because it's filled with globalist rhinos. And we are going to get rid of them, and we are going to expose them relentlessly without apology. And remember the two names that I gave you today. We're going to return our state legislature to the people, to you. And with your help, we can.